They busted heaven open like a cheap beer can, and the whole skyline over New Liberty bled neon. Everybody in the Rust Belt saw it. Nobody believed it. And by the time belief set in, the Dominion's dropships were already exhaling their 8-foot shock beasts into what was left of downtown. Dominion archivists thought they had us pegged. A tired species that spent 2 centuries auctioning off its own future for 30-second dopamine hits and quarterly profits. What those star-polished analysts failed to clock was the thing simmering under all our fractures, the American habit of never staying down once we've decided we're mad enough to stand up. I was Staff Sergeant Jackson Cole once, 87th Infantry, 2 tours that ended when Congress ran out of budgets and reasons. By the night, the sky cracked. My uniform was a threadbare hoodie, and my barracks was the gutted shell of a Pittsburgh row house. Nobody wrote ballads about the Wolf of Red Summit back then. I was just another vet scrounging batteries and bad coffee, wondering whether the next noise outside was looters or the repo man. The Dominion didn't send diplomats, just one looping broadcast: "You failed your stewardship. Kneel or be corrected." Most governments folded before the sun came up. Credit where it's due. Hunger is a hell of a persuader, but in the neighborhoods already written off the maps, the only crowns we recognized were baseball caps and bike helmets. The first real answer came out of Detroit. Some Tulandi lifer named Miguel Ortez cracked a shockbeast's faceplate with a shovel, and the moment the alien bled purple on Michigan Avenue, the rest of us tasted something we hadn't felt in decades: permission. Permission to hit back. Permission to stop waiting for somebody with the flag to tell us we mattered. Within 48 hours, the so-called American defense grid was 3 kids with a ham radio and a playlist of outlaw country murder ballads. But the streets were alive. I pulled together 6 killers who didn't ask for our some S. Tanner Exmarine, who kept a lucky AA battery taped behind his ear. Elise, a nurse who traded sutures for C4. Raffi and Boone, cousins who could hotwire a Dominion scout bike with 2 teaspoons. Bishop, quiet as snowfall, but the sharpest marksman I ever met. And Evelyn, yeah, that Evelyn. The field medic who'd rather regrow a tomato than reload a mag, but stayed anyway. We weren't a unit. We were bad memories with trigger fingers. Dominion analysts called us insects. That was their second mistake. Their first was landing. We used sewer steam as cover, welded roofing nails into pipe bombs, laced bullets with Garage-grade acid that chewed through their Maror scale. Armor like sugar in iced tea. They sent drones. We fed the drones false heat signatures ripped from busted microwaves. They dropped Arbiter-class Enforcer's 9-foot judgment engines with kinetic halos, and we buried the first one beneath 4 tons of collapsing parking deck. Spray-painted "Welcome to Pennsylvania, no refunds" on the rubble, and broadcast the coordinates on open channel just to make sure HQ noticed. By month 2, the Dominion started overcommitting. Siege walkers that stomped through city blocks like bored gods. Plasma barbs that turned highway asphalt into obsidian. Rivers. They called us diseased. We called that Thursday. Humanity's secret superpower wasn't courage, it was the long memory of every plague, meltdown, and Twitter argument we'd crawled out of. When the Arbiter, nicknamed High Voice, challenged any alpha combatant to single combat outside burned out Chicago, I strapped 6 stolen grenades to my chest, walked straight into his sermon, and grinned wide enough that he paused long enough for me to jam the final charge in his throat. The blast painted the skyline redder than July 4th. I spent 3 days unconscious and woke up to Evelyn reading Tom Sawyer to a room full of shell-shocked kids while Bishop jury-rigged more acid rounds in the hallway. And the rumor mill, it crowned a new myth. The wolf smiled at the god and the god bled. Hook set. The Dominion flinched. Patrol ships thinned. Their own conscript species caught the scent of our defiance and started misfiring. One jellyfish-aped translator we nicknamed Ribs defected mid-skirmish, took 3 plasma darts to warn us about a pincer, died grinning, told me he'd practiced that human smile for weeks. Every martyr sharpened the edge. Every city block we lost got booby-trapped so thoroughly the enemy stopped taking ground and started asking it permission. They hammered New Omaha to ash-burned refugees. Mothers, babies, and in the sick amber glow of that live stream, the whole planet made one collective, murderous decision. No more lines in the sand. We push until somebody falls off the map. Within a week, our 6-person cell was 30 strong. Half ex-cons, half farmers whose cornfields were now glass. We hijacked a Dominion courier craft that used neural controls. None of us were compatible, so we just crash-landed it into their mobile command obelisk and laughed while it turned into a violet sun. We weren't heroes. We were the bill come due, and the Dominion's credit was maxed out. Problem was, the Dominion mistook our frenzy for randomness and kept throwing grinders at a wall they swore would crack. Instead, it started eating their grinders. They blanketed whole zip codes with hunter-killer drones. So we lured those chrome hornets into the steam plumes of shuttered steel mills and let the heat bloom. Turned their sensors suicidal. They dropped sorrow gas, a neurotoxin that floods your amygdala with weaponized nostalgia. So we popped stolen fire suppression canisters full of powdered caffeine and bath salt cocktails, converting tearful hallucinations into berserker choirs. Every time they pivoted, we pirouetted nastier. By the 3rd month, the Pittsburgh cell had merged with rogue outfits from Cleveland and Albany. We were Fortipless now, callsign Forge Pack, staging hit-and fade carnivals that rewrote the manual on asymmetric grief. Boise saboteurs hijacked grain silo augers, spitting rusted bolts into flight paths like shotguns the size of skyscrapers. Houston hackers repurposed FEMA satellites, remember those? Into orbital flashlights that flared Dominion optics blind during midnight supply drops. And somewhere in the Carolinas, rumors said a one-eyed preacher was smuggling Dominion power cores into church basements, rewiring them into weather cannons that brewed tornadoes on demand. Nobody fact-checked, nobody cared. The point was the stories all ended the same way. We chose the battleground, and the score was paid in purple plasma and Dominion panic. That panic birthed their next horror, the Adjudicator Prime, callsign Silver Vox, a 9-foot mythology in living platinum who supposedly singed its way out of a star's corona. Dominion brass dropped it on the outskirts of New Chicago with the Gladiators flourish holographic banners, Orchestra of Sabas, Warchants, the whole WrestleMania entrance. It announced, in a drawl smooth as rain on marble, that humankind could earn negotiation rights if one warrior survived single combat. Cute. Forge Pack spent 2 nights boating C4 barrels through sewer rivers to ring the kill zone. On the 3rd dawn, I walked into that bomb garden carrying nothing but Bishop's dad's .357 and my best Evel Knievel grin. Silver Vox sliced air itself when it moved. Eddies of shredded snow twinkled like confetti, so I kept my shoulders loose. Let the monster monologue about evolutionary cul-de-sacs while Elise and Tanner, buried under 12 inches of slush, synchronized detonators to my heartbeat. I took a deliberate knee at 20 paces, holstered the revolver like I'd quit, and when the adjudicator strode forward to crown himself victor, I whispered, "Checkmate." Choirboy, 40 pounds of fertilizerless plastique roared under his feet. I dove into a drainage trench. The blast cracked windows in Wisconsin. Dominion triage crews fished fist-sized fragments of their demigod out of Lake Michigan for a week. But the only fragment that mattered was the legend. The wolf knelt only to blow the devil sky high. Momentum went feral. Conscripts from subjugated moons, the Dendrax, the Kalindi, even those translucent sphere-dwellers nobody could pronounce started pinging pirate frequencies asking for instructions. We didn't have a flag big enough, so we gave them a compass. Break your chains, break your overseers, and if you can't break the cruiser above you, set the docks on fire so it can't refuel. Somewhere between those broadcasts and the fresh craters in downtown Milwaukee, Dominion Command realized Earth was grinding their trillion credit invasion into a bar tab of catastrophic losses. Their analysts coined a new term, anthroviral hostility syndrome, a fancy way to say these lunatics get stronger the harder we hit them. So the brass pivoted to fortress doctrine. Erect a plate-wide lattice of command spires, mile-high obelisks jacked into geothermal veins, each one anchoring orbital force fields and drone swarms. Knock a soldier down, fine. Knock a spire and the entire region goes dark. Trouble was, they built the first prototype in what used to be Colorado Springs, smack on a mountain range humanity knew better than its own vices, and the Dominion paved half those peaks into slag, leaving tunnels nobody but old American miners remembered. Bingo! Operation Red Summit stitched together every rogue cell from Anchorage to Key West. 48 fighters total. Average life expectancy 47 minutes once boots hit hot zone, and not a single volunteer flinched. Raffi and Boone spent 3 weeks mapping abandoned NORAD ducts under Cheyenne Mountain. Tanner welded farm combine blades into climbing crampons, and Evelyn brewed a painkiller cocktail potent enough to keep a legless man sprinting for 90 seconds, the exact time our demolition math said we'd need to sprint from core breach to safe radius. If safe meant maybe your bones stay on the inside. We breached during a freak blizzard, wind screaming like jets, snow horizontal. Dominion thermal lenses pixelated useless white, so their perimeter patrols defaulted to flashlight beams, human flashlights, salvaged during previous raids. Now, possessed by the ghosts they thought they'd buried, we shimmied up exhaust vents scaffolded with alien organometal, and there, 200 feet above bomb-proof ground, we crawled into the belly of the beast. The spire's core was a floating sphere the size of a city bus, tethered by magnetic umbilicals, pulsing data to every Dominion asset within atmosphere. Elise kissed a rosary, wired twin fusion cells to a toaster coil trigger, amen, and Tanner painted a smiley face on the charge, because gallows humor is an American vitamin. We had 70 seconds to evac. First guard we tripped wore an X-ray that could fold a tank. Bishop double-tapped the visor seam before the monster finished turning. Second guard got Raffi with the wrist blade, took his arm clean at the elbow. Evelyn jammed a tourniquet, told him he had precisely 3 beers waiting beyond detonation, so he'd better keep moving. We skated down maintenance rails on cafeteria trays, physics screaming nope. Boone overshot the landing, shattered both ankles, still lobbed suppressive fire until his rifle clicked dry, then waved us on with a grin that'll haunt me longer than any nightmare. We hit ground level with 16 seconds spare, sprinted into a drainage culvert, and the mountain behind us turned into a newborn sun. The pulse cannibalized the lattice. Drones froze. Mechs keeled. Orbital coms sneezed themselves catatonic. Globally, 9 other cells popped their local spires within the same minute. Dominion Warnet collapsed like an over-leveraged hedge fund. For the first time in a millennium, according to some exiled historian, we later rescued the Dominion. Tasted systemic defeat. Ships in low orbit spun chaotic. Some tried emergency lift, smashed into one another, rained fire across the Midwest. Patrol captains screamed for orders that no longer existed. Their propaganda holocasts flickered, replaced by pirate feeds looping. Footage of New Omaha's ashes and a single caption, "Blood for blood, we're not done." My lungs were full of dust and victory, and the dull ache of everyone we'd stapled back together with hope and duct tape. But euphoria's a short-lived high. The come down is bills in the mail. Dominion survivors on the ground rebranded themselves the resurgent cohort, bunkered inside prefab citadels ringed with auto turrets and moat fields, think medieval castles. But the alligators are railgun arrays. We were too battered for direct siege, too stubborn for retreat. So we pivoted the playbook. We became hunters. Nights blurred into months of knife shadow assassinations, supply convoy ambushes, and psychological needlework. Bishop hacked their emergency channel, splicing Dominion lullabies with the screams of their own dying officers. Morale nosedived so fast, our scouts reported cohort commanders duct taping their helmets on in case an imaginary sniper was already sighted. But the cohort still had teeth, especially their last warlord, Archpraetor Carrix, holed up in a bunker city carved under the skeleton of the Bavarian Alps. He'd erected something new, the Dread Pillar, a tower laced with self-healing alloy, rumored to house a clone vet big enough to respawn half a legion every 6 hours. Intel said orbital reinforcement could slip through the chaos in under a year. That gave us one option: finish the job before the galaxy could reboot the nightmare. 27 of us forge packs scarred core plus volunteers from 3 Continents hiked through nuclear wind shear and avalanches that sounded like God clearing his throat. We lost Tanner to a sonic mine, Elise to a smart metal net that chewed through bone, Raffi to slow infection when meds ran dry. Every name burned itself in my ledger. When we finally breached the Pillar's summit deck, Carrick's greeted us in gold trim armor, chastised our feral insurgency, and lectured on the cosmic hierarchy right up until I shot him in the kneecap, carved live free into his chest plate, and let Liam, a 39-year-old orphan who'd walked 600 miles to join us, pull the trigger that ended the sermon. Evelyn wired the Pillar's core to melt down on a 5 minute fuse. We barely cleared the blast radius, and the shockwave collapsed half the mountain range like a house of cards. Dominion broadcasts went dead. Their last sky eyes winked out. Earth exhaled, and the exhale felt wrongly quiet. Because victory is just the start of the next reckoning. When the dust settled, the planet was a mosaic of craters, lawless zones, and trauma no medic can stitch. Dominion wreckage became currency. Warlords sprouted like weeds. Evelyn begged to plant, to heal, to prove something green could still claw through the cinders. And I followed her to an abandoned Tuscan hillside where the soil tasted like rusted nails. We built rows of tomatoes under busted solar panels, traded seeds for antibiotics, drew a crude sign, Evelyn's Haven grow or go. For a flicker it worked, kids laughed. The wind smelled like basil instead of burning plastic. Then came the Ash Division, ex-soldiers waving salvage Dominion rifles, preaching purification through conquest. Their leader wore a trenchcoat stitched from Dominion banners, and thought that made him king. He offered protection. Evelyn offered him a shovel and directions to bury his ego. He promised to return. Dawn of the 7th month, he did 100 guns strong. We were 7. Doesn't matter how that ledger balanced. When the smoke cleared, the Ash Division was fractured, the trenchcoat king scattered in red mist, and Evelyn bled out in my arms, whispering, "Save the roots." I buried her under the fattest tomato vine. The legend morphed again. The wolf who smiled at gods now wept for a gardener. And that, neighbor, is where triumph curdles into obligation, because if you torch heaven and hell alike, what's left is soil that only grows what you plant. Liam took over patrols. Bishop limps fields at dusk, teaching kids to breathe before they squeeze triggers. I keep the old rifle under my cot for when history's next fool mistakes are quiet for weakness. Dominion might crawl back someday, or maybe Earth will birth its own new empire, convinced it can manage the chaos better than the last. Doesn't matter. The hook of our story hasn't changed since the night New Liberty's sky broke open. Don't bet against a people who've learned to smile at monsters, because once the grin shows teeth, the reckoning writes itself. The seasons changed, but war didn't care about calendars. Our garden became a memory with roots that couldn't be bombed. Evelyn's Haven turned into a waypoint somewhere between sacred ground and battlefield myth. Wanderers came in droves, not just to kneel by her grave, but to learn how to fight without becoming what we hated. Liam carved her name into the steel hull of every mech we captured. Bishop started painting crude suns on rooftops, orange and gold, like her eyes so lost scouts had something human to follow. Word spread that the Haven was rebuilding, not just surviving. That scared the fractured powers still clinging to the ashes of Dominion rule. The Ash Division was just the first. After them came the Shroud Syndicate from the Balkan ruins, selling cybernetic loyalty chips that turned children into programmable foot soldiers. Then came the Dust Kings, mad on fungal nerve gas and biblical metaphors. And worse, rumors that some of the old Dominion biotech labs were stirring again. This time not under alien orders, but rogue Earth generals who wanted a seat at the next Empire's table. But we were evolving too. Liam had grown into something. Fierce as baby fat burned into scarred sinew. His laugh sharper, less frequent. He'd seen too much for a 17-year-old. But somehow, he still believed in purpose. His favorite word was rebuild. Mine had become enough. We had enough firepower to level towns, enough intel to crash supply lines, and enough ghosts to fill 1,000 nightmares. So I called in what was left of Forge Pack and whoever wore Evelyn's son on their sleeve. 32 of us, spread across the globe, all carrying wounds that never quite stopped whispering. I made a simple declaration. No more warlords. No more crowns. If they tried to build a throne, we burn the wood before they sit. It started small precision strikes, targeting generators, labs, war councils. We became the myth again. Ash, ghosts, dirt-born phantoms, the nightmare that walks. Liam orchestrated the hits like a conductor scoring a thunderstorm. He rebuilt Bishop's old code rig to hijack satellite patterns, turning weather into a weapon. We stormed the Dust Kings during a heat wave so brutal it made their blood bubble in their suits. We lured the Shroud Syndicate into a trap by letting them capture a refugee caravan wired with EMP mines hidden in prosthetic limbs. They opened fire on what they thought were civilians only to find themselves blind, mute, and surrounded by fighters who moved like their own shadows had betrayed them. But the real enemy wasn't out there anymore. It was the ideology creeping back into desperate men's bones. People missed structure, even the wrong kind. The Dominion had offered order. Now, the world had chaos and grief and silence. In that void, bad promises bloom. We heard whispers from the Arctic remnants bioengineered. Soldiers with Dominion upgrades who'd gone feral after the war's collapse. They called themselves the Purity Reclaimers, and their leader was a former human, a defector, one of ours. Her name was Dr. Marion Voss, once Forge Pack's brightest mind, the one who figured out how to fuse Dominion energy cores into human power grids. She disappeared after the fall of Zurich. We thought she was dead. We were wrong. Turns out, Voss had found one of the last functional Dominion cradles hidden in a frozen sinkhole. She'd revived it, modified it, and started creating hybrids, part human, part Dominion. Not machines, not organics, something in between. She called them Ascendants. They looked like us, moved like us, but their eyes were too still, too patient. We learned this the hard way when a convoy delivering med supplies to our network never returned. A week later, we found the wreckage. No blood, no sign of battle, just a single word burned into the hood of the lead vehicle, Evolve. We couldn't ignore her. Bishop said confronting Voss would be suicide. Liam disagreed, said if we let her build unchecked, the next Dominion wouldn't come from the stars, it would rise from Earth wearing our dead friends' faces. So we scouted, slowly. Satellite echoes showed the Reclaimers building out from a massive glacier, hollow known as the Vault. Every seismic reading we got screamed nightmare. Liam led a 5-person recon unit. Only he and Mercy, our sharpshooter, came back. The others, we still don't know. Liam didn't talk for 3 days. When he did, he simply said, "She's made gods in the dark, and they still remember our names." We planned the strike anyway. Forge Pack's last ride. 30 of us, loaded with cryo charges and custom EMP spears built from scavenged Dominion marrow fiber. Mercy coded a new virus to scramble the hybrid's neural sync. I designed the approach. No stealth, no bait, just fury. We hit the vault during the solar blackout, a 3-hour eclipse that cloaked the Arctic in ink. We repelled from old weather balloons stitched together with heat-reflective tarp and prayer. We fought in tunnels that looked like ice had dreams, lined with Dominion script and frozen faces screaming mid-mutation. The hybrids were faster, smarter, not cruel, just cold. But Forge Pack didn't break. Bishop ran a microwave pulse that fused their core relays. Liam used a mining rig's sound cannon to shatter their equilibrium mid-charge. I jammed a cryospear into what used to be a 12-year-old medic named Mina, her eyes glowing white-hot, her voice repeating my name in reverse. She whispered, "Father," before she froze solid. I shattered her with a single shot. Still haven't forgiven myself. We made it to the heart of the vault, a chamber of living ice pulsing with energy veins like arteries. And there was Voss. Not aged, not entirely human anymore. She looked at Liam like a proud mother and said, "I built a future where pain doesn't win." He answered by throwing the first grenade. She moved like a memory, impossible angles, digitized gravity. Bishop died shielding Mercy. Mercy took Voss's right eye. I took her spine. The vault collapsed in on itself as Liam triggered the detonation. We barely made it out. The shockwave threw us into the snow like matchsticks. Half our crew didn't rise. When it was over, the ascendants were gone. The signal went dark, and in the eerie silence that followed, I heard Evelyn's voice in my head. Save the roots. We did. Barely. With fewer friends, more scars, and a world still unsure whether we were saviors or lunatics. The war never really ended, it just evolved. But so did we. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were stewards. Liam started building again, hydroponics towers, filtration grids, schools. I taught kids how to shoot and how to write poetry in the same afternoon. Mercy grew apple trees using soil she swore she mixed with Bishop's ashes. The Dominion never came back. Maybe we scared them. Maybe we proved something. That we could be monstrous without losing our humanity. That we could choose chaos, but still protect each other in the wreckage. That even in a world broken beyond maps, we could still find direction. Not from stars, not from gods, from each other. Because when all else burns, the only compass left is the fire inside you. Winter came hard that year, the kind of cold that makes your bones talk back. We buried the last of Forge Pack under frozen soil and silence. No speeches, just their names carved into a wall we welded from scrap Dominion plating names. Not ranks. Liam said titles die quicker than memories. He was right. We stopped calling ourselves soldiers. That word belonged to the past. Now, we were something else. Guardians, maybe. Or just tired people trying not to die stupid. We rebuilt Evelyn's haven from the wreckage, this time not just as a shelter, but as a promise. We carved the rules deeper into stone this time. Protect the weak, feed the hungry, bury the dead. Never draw first blood, but finish what they start. We didn't put my name on anything. I told them if they wanted to remember someone, remember the woman who planted fruit trees during a war. Remember the mechanic who taught kids to reroute plasma cores into irrigation pumps. Remember the boy who saw ghosts and chose to become light instead. But time doesn't pause, even for the worthy. One night, the perimeter sensors picked up movement. Quiet, slow, deliberate. I thought it might be scavengers again, or maybe a lost patrol. We went out in silence, Liam, Mercy, and me, like the old days. What we found was worse than anything we'd fought before. 3 figures. 1 adult, 2 children. Their bodies buzzed not with tech, but with something deeper. Their skin pulsed faintly, like backlit veins of starlight. Dominion scars, but old, healed, controlled. The man raised his hand slowly and said, "I come in peace. My name is Rami." The name meant nothing, but his story did. Rami was from one of the last hidden colonies, an underground city built beneath the ruins of Johannesburg. The city had experimented with Dominion genetics, trying to purify resistance to radiation and disease. Most failed, but a few, like Rami, adapted. Their children inherited the enhancements, but also something else, an instinctual network. A kind of shared sensory map, not telepathy, but closer to emotional radar. They could feel intent, taste lies. Rami didn't want war. He wanted sanctuary, said their sanctuary was dying. Crops mutated, water turned to brine, minds fractured from isolation. He wasn't lying. Mercy felt at first his fear, wrapped in calm. Liam agreed to let them in on one condition. They help us fix what we broke. So we started teaching them, and they taught us right back. The children Yara and Fen could memorize patrol rotations in one glance. They mapped the valley in 2 days, including underground heat pockets and natural water tunnels we hadn't found in years. But their presence triggered rumors. Some people in the haven whispered, "Dominion seeds." Others called them Echoborn. Mercy shut it down fast. Said if we judged them by their blood, we were no better than the old enemy. Still, the tension grew. Some old fighters didn't trust them. One night, someone tried to burn Rami's shelter. Didn't even deny it. Said he'd lost too much to forgive that easily. I stood in front of the Haven circle that night, voice hoarse, heart tired. Said if we wanted the world to be better, we had to start acting like it already was. Said that Evelyn once told me, kindness isn't naive, it's the bravest damn thing you can still choose after everything's gone to hell. And most people listened. Rami's people started integrating, not all at once. Slowly, they helped reinforce our barriers, taught us how to use Old Dominion signal flare as insect repellent, how to neutralize radiation bloom in soil. Yara joined Mercy on watch patrols. Fen started writing songs in 3 languages. Our kids sang them at night. But peace is always a cliff with wind on your back. It doesn't last. 3 months after Rami arrived, a drone fell from the sky. Not a scout, not Dominion, something newer, sleeker. We found it half buried in a ravine. Its black plating humming low, a predator's breath. No insignia, no signal. When we cracked it open, we found a hard drive filled with names. Our names, coordinates, blueprints of the haven, detailed threat assessments of Liam, me, Mercy, even the children. Someone out there had been watching, preparing. Liam spent a week decrypting the rest. What we found chilled us more than any winter storm. A new faction, the Axiom Protocol. No flag, no god, just an idea. The world cannot be trusted to govern itself. They believed the Dominion had failed because they were alien. But humans could succeed where the stars failed. All they needed was control. They weren't trying to bring back the Dominion. They were trying to perfect it. Their motto, order without emotion. They'd already built 3 sanctuaries. We found footage of one, a city with no crime, no noise, no laughter. Everything regulated. Children raised by machines, artists re-educated, farmers replaced by automated drones. It looked clean. It looked safe. It looked dead. They had eyes everywhere. Recruited engineers, scientists, disillusioned survivors who were tired of gray morality and just wanted something that made sense. But the cost was too high. Liam said it best. I'd rather die in chaos than live in a coffin called peace. We didn't wait for them to come. We sent out scouts, reached out to old allies. A few answered. Most were dead. The rest didn't. Believe us or worse, agreed with Axiom's vision, said the world had had its chance, said compassion was too slow, and just like that, we were back on the edge, the line between fire and frost. I looked out at the haven one morning and felt something I hadn't in years, fear, not of dying, but of watching everything we built get rewritten by people who thought safety meant silence. We gathered the council. Rami stood beside Liam. Mercy nodded from the shadows. I looked at all of them and said, this isn't just about survival anymore. It's about memory. We've got to remind the world what real living looks like. And that means showing them we can bleed without turning into monsters. That we can fight without forgetting why we're fighting. That Evelyn's dream doesn't die just because someone else decided comfort was easier than courage. The next day, we started planning. Not war, not yet. A reminder, a spark. It started with music, not bullets, not broadcasts, just music. We built signal towers, short range, but strong enough to reach a few hundred miles. Fen composed something between a lullaby and a war song, something that hummed with hope and memory. It played on a loop from dusk till dawn, mixed with stories, our stories, of Evelyn's garden, of Mercy's defiance, of Rami's second chance. No propaganda, just voices, human, raw, real. And people heard us. Not thousands, not yet, but enough. Enough to come looking. Some in secret, some in shame. A few wearing Axiom insignias, torn and frayed. One woman arrived barefoot, carrying only a book. Another brought seeds wrapped in cloth stitched with her mother's name. They didn't want war. They wanted proof that something else was possible, and we gave it to them. Slowly, the haven became more than a refuge. It became a lighthouse, not for safety, but for clarity. A place that didn't claim to have all the answers, but refused to forget the questions. Still, we prepared. Not with weapons, though we had those, but with truths. We wrote them on stone, on cloth, on circuit boards. Truths like, fear is natural, cruelty is not. The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs honest ones. Don't follow a leader, follow a purpose. If you build something beautiful, be ready to bleed for it. Kids from rival clans trained together. One girl from the Ash Cities learned to make solar stills from broken Dominion helmets. An old man taught us how to tell when a storm was coming, just by watching the birds. We became a library of survivors, not scholars, not saints, just people trying, but the storm came anyway. Axiom didn't send an army at first, they sent choice. One morning, we woke to drones dropping leaflets, smooth paper, artificial ink, printed promises. Unified prosperity awaits. Join now. No one gets left behind. The protocol ends pain. They offered clean food, fast medicine, safety, comfort, all for surrender. A few left. I don't blame them. Some were tired, some were sick, some didn't believe we'd survive another war. That's the thing about hope, it's heavy, and not everyone's strong enough to carry it forever. But the rest of us stayed, even the new ones, especially the young. Yara stood on the wall that night, looking out at the horizon glowing with Axiom's artificial dawn. They'll come, she said. I know. You ready? I looked at her, at the tower Evelyn built, at the garden, still blooming through frost and ash. Not yet, I said. But we will be. And we were. When the protocol marched, they didn't wear teeth like the flock. They wore silence. Armor that didn't creak, faces that didn't blink. They came not as conquerors, but as doctors ready to heal us. They called it the final synchronization. We answered with fire, not from guns but from hearts. Liam rerouted the signal towers to scramble their drones. Mercy led a flanking team through an underground tunnel system built decades earlier. The kids evacuated the youngest through creek paths mapped only by memory. I stood at the gate, rifle in one hand, spade in the other. Life and death, both. It wasn't a clean fight. It wasn't glorious, but it was honest. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we remembered why we fought. For a name carved in stone, for a song hummed at night, for a garden planted in grief but watered with belief. And when the final protocol officer fell not by bullet, but by refusing to kneel, we didn't cheer. We sat, we breathed, we buried, we wrote their names too, because even our enemies deserved to be remembered, not for what they did, but for what they could have become. After that, things got quiet. Not peaceful, never peaceful, but quieter. Seasons changed. The soil healed. The kids grew into leaders. I spent my mornings by the orchard, speaking to Evelyn's memory like she might still be listening. And maybe she was. In the wind, in the laughter, in the bruises that didn't break us. One day Rami built a bench near her tree. You should sit more, he said. I sit when I'm dead. He laughed. You've died twice already, smiled. Then maybe I earned a third chance. Time kept moving. We never stopped watching the horizon, never stopped teaching the new ones, but we stopped hiding from the fire, because fire wasn't always destruction. Sometimes it was light, sometimes it was warmth. They still tell stories about Evelyn's haven, about the girl who planted roots in ruin, about the boy who learned how to sing his way out of rage, about the man who laid down his rifle, not because he lost faith, but because he finally found something worth trusting again. They say we're legends now. I don't care for the word. Legends are just truths told to loud.me. I'm just a man, with old hands and older scars, walking the edge of a field that still grows despite everything. If you're out there, if you're reading this, hearing this, feeling this, know one thing. It's not too late. Not to rebuild. Not to believe. Not to begin again. But don't come looking for a hero. We buried all of those. Come ready to listen. Come ready to bleed. Come ready to grow. Because the world's still burning. But this time maybe we plant anyway.